Matthew, sort of your a quick reaction to the big aversion that we just diverted here by at least reaching a tentative agreement.
Well, Taylor, I think we're all pleased to see this kind of progress and commend President Biden for his personal engagement and especially Secretary Walsh, the Labor Secretary, for the really Herculean efforts over the last 24 hours, all of last night into the wee hours of this morning, to try to bring people together. So it's extraordinarily important for our economy, for consumers, American families, workers, that we get this deal ratified. We can't tolerate any further interruption in service. We know the challenges and the pressure the supply chain is already feeling. Consumers are facing increased prices across all commodities and virtually everything else they're buying. So this is a great, we hope, a great outcome, and let's hope that they get this completed and get it ratified as quickly as possible.
We talk a lot about the pain in the supply chain, whether it comes to auto vehicles, when it comes to oil, even grain shipments that have been halted, not to mention the commuting. Retail has had a little bit of buffer. Of course, we know you represent the National Retail Federation, working with the likes of Walmart, Bloomingdale's, Macy's, Target, you name it. Walk us through why the inventory buildup in retail perhaps creates a little bit of a cushion when it comes to these supply chain issues.
Well, the inventory issue is really fascinating because we know that early in the pandemic, 2.5 years ago, we saw how quickly consumers pivoted away from certain categories of goods, and that caused retailers to then try to quickly backfill and stock the things that suddenly became very popular. And then as we came out of the worst days of the pandemic and the economy began to recover in new ways, we saw incredibly stimulated demand because of the monetary and fiscal policy, the $10 trillion we put into the economy over the last 18 months. And then consumers really began to spend. And so, you know, you've seen this push-pull. At the moment now, based on historic averages, we're actually relatively low in the aggregate relative to historic averages of the amount of inventory currently held per dollars of sales. So normally we'd hold about $1.45 in inventory for every dollar of sales. Now we're averaging about $1.20 in inventory. So it's relatively low historically, but it does provide a bit of a cushion. And as you were saying, you can't just flip a switch and turn the supply chain back on. And hopefully in some of these categories, if we have shortages, we can compensate for that because we've got a little bit of extra inventory there.
Well, speaking of that, a lot of the planning for the holiday season, which it feels like a crime to even mention given we're just starting fall here, but I'm curious about how prepared retail is right now for the holiday season, specifically when there are these supply chain issues, there are these labor issues in the works. Does that mean we're going to see a leaner Christmas this year?
Kriti, I think what we're going to see this year is we'll see retailers continuing to be able to anticipate where the demand is coming from. We know that they've had to change pretty dramatically from earlier this spring. We saw the rapid pivot from customers away from certain categories as inflationary pressures really started to peak in the spring. And so retailers, I think, have a good indication of what we're in for this year. There's a lot of resilience in the consumer segment of our economy. Retail sales were released today for the month of August. On a year-over-year basis, by our calculation, they're up about 7.5%. Over last year, last August, which itself was up 14%. So there's a lot of robust consumer behavior here, notwithstanding the price increases. And so I think we're going to see maybe a little more promotion this year. We know consumers are looking for real value, but we think our members will be prepared to meet the demand they find.
Talk to me about that, the deflationary forces inevitably that come from the discounting.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep an eye on in certain categories, certain segments, because consumers are going to be under pressure, is they're going to look for value and they're going to go to certain categories. They're going to go to certain segments and sectors of the industry. And again, I think, you know, we see promotions every holiday season at some level, and those promotions are generally planned and thoughtful and deliberate. So we know where you're going to discount and promote in order to attract the market and to generate some attention. And the question now is, you know, can retailers balance the demand in the market and higher prices against inventory levels? And we feel like they know what they need to do, and they'll be well positioned to make that a successful holiday season.